Here we are at the Brusie Funeral Home on Broadway, across from Tin Roof. And here is the entrance. We're going to talk to Marc. Okay, what is this?
So that's an old funeral home. Our business, Bidwell Chapel, goes back, and it's changed names over the years, but Bicknell, the Bicknell family owned it for, I don't know how many years, a long time. And so that's downtown. I think that's on Broadway. I'm not sure what building that is. And before that it was called Fetters and Williams. And Fetters and Williams started in 1880.
Wow. What's this middle one?
That's the same building.
Oh.
I think there was a fire and they're having a fire sale.
Oh.
I think the sign.
And this was a funeral home?
Yeah, it was furniture and undertaking. If you see the sign, furniture and undertaking. So that was probably a furniture maker that made coffins.
Oh, right.
And the kind of that coffin business would develop into a funeral home or undertaking business.
And how far back does this go again? What year, roughly?
Well, Fetters and Williams would have been 1880, and that probably would have been 1890, maybe right around the turn of the century.
Wow. And this is a stagecoach. Is it like a hearse?
That is a hearse. I think the second one in the line there is the funeral carriage, or the hearse coach. But that's got to be a picture of Bidwell's funeral.
Wow.
Just by the number of wagon, carriages. They just keep going back. You can't even see the end of them.
Do you have any idea when he died? I don't remember.
No,
like
I don't.
Late. Annie gave the park in 1905, and that was after he died.
Yeah, I think he died in the late 1800s, and she died at around 1910, I want to say.
Interesting. And these are old signs from the...
Yeah, this probably would have been on the side of a wagon or a funeral coach.
Oh, wow.
Fetters and Williams, that was the first funeral home in Chico.
Mm-hmm.
And then it became H.C. Bicknell. And that sign stayed on the building there at Bidwell Chapel on 3rd and Normal Street until the state made us take it down. We were out of compliance with our license if we advertised another name of a funeral home. And so while it was a historic sign of the original builder of that building in the 1920s, we had to take it down.
Wow. How did you get a hold of these? Oh, because it was on your building. Yeah, it was there. Got it. Thanks. And this is where services are held?
It is.
And who usually officiates?
Whoever the family wants.
Does the Brusie help out with that if they don't have someone?
Yeah, we have some people that we can call on that we work with on a regular basis. So.
Got it.
Even if they have their own clergy, we call the clergy for them to arrange that.
Oh my goodness, and these are for all the choices for cremation.
Yeah, those are all ours.
For my mother, I used a lettuce container.
Oh, sure. Anything will do.
Okay, so let me say, Marc Brusie, thank you for talking with me. I am so impressed that in modern times you could have a family of 3 generations, your grandfather, 1942, your father, you, who are in the same business. How does that happen? It's really unusual.
It's unusual, but it's not terribly unusual for a funeral business to go on for generations.
Oh.
It's not uncommon. And there are some that are 4th and 5th generation, probably on the East Coast more so than here. You know, our history isn't that old here on the West Coast.
And why is that?
Why is it that it stays in the business, in the family? Well, by our nature, I think our businesses are stable.
People die.
Typically don't have good years and bad years. It's pretty much steady, and as long as you don't do a bad job, people will continue to use your service. And so I think that's one reason. It's not something that has gone out of style, funerals, or the need for someone to handle the remains is still needed by consumers and has been. So until that changes, it'll be a pretty steady business. And I think another thing that makes it stay in a family is that there's not a tremendous amount of people who want to be in the business. So if you've grown up in it, it's kind of natural for you to be in the business. You're not afraid of it. And whereas, you know, the general public, this wouldn't rate very high on their list of careers. So I think that's another reason that it tends to stay in the family.
I wanted to ask you something a little bit tangential, which is people really struggle with how to comfort someone who's had a recent loss of someone they love. And I wonder, you've done a lot of that. What do you find is helpful, especially if you don't know the person really well? I'm sorry for your loss. I don't know. What seems to be comforting?
I'm not sure people need small comforts. They need to be close to family and friends, close friends. I think there's a tremendous value in having a service, and people can be uplifted by the presence of people who were very close to the deceased. We're kind of getting away from that. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but people who have lost someone are very receptive to, and I just said they don't need small condolences, but like a card, I don't think of that as really a very small thing. You've got to take time to write something, put it on paper, put a stamp on the envelope and mail it, and people who have just lost someone appreciate that kind of effort to do that. A post on social media, I think, is one of those like throwaway kind of things that I don't think is really of much value to someone that's lost someone, but those things like receiving a plant or a dish that someone cooked and is brought to the house are things that are very much appreciated.
And what people don't know what to say. So do you have some suggestions for something that conveys meaning that can be heartfelt?
No, I don't think there's a secret to that. We all are the same. We don't know what to say. And so if I've lost someone and I come across you and you are trying to say something, I know the position that you're in and the difficulty that you have for finding the right words. And just the fact that you're trying to struggle to say something kind to me, I know and feel where you're coming from. So there's no secret magic word to be said. It's just something that we all go through, and so we all know and can tell when someone means well for us. So if you mean well for someone who's lost someone, they'll know it.
Okay, be sincere. What I find is that I'm really thrilled when I come across something that my mother wrote that's handwriting, and I just come across like a little postcard, or someone is going through their things and found a letter she sent them. So I would encourage everybody to write in their handwriting something meaningful to leave behind for them, for their family members.
Sure.
Your grandfather, there's a lot of Warrens in your family. So Warren P. came to Chico after studying at the College of Mortuary Sciences in San Francisco.
True.
And what does one learn? And because you went to that same school as well.
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Your father did?
He did. He went to San Francisco, yeah.
And what does one learn there? Like the business part, the human relations part, what is everything?
I think they do teach all of that, but the big thing that someone gets from that is the embalming, the ability to, the knowledge how to embalm and a license to embalm.
Mm.
That's the main reason that people go to mortuary college.
Mm. And does one require to do that before you put a body in a coffin and put it in the ground?
Not necessarily.
Ah.
No. Embalming is for like long-term storage. Let's say we have to keep someone for a couple months for someone to return to the country for the service. So we would probably embalm for that purpose. If the body's going to go in a mausoleum crypt, so inside a building, above ground, embalming is almost always required for that. To put on an airplane to ship, we almost always have to embalm to do that. And then our policy for public viewing is to embalm for public viewing.
Are some of the same techniques still used that the ancient Egyptians used?
You know, I'm not an embalmer myself, and so I'm probably not the best person to ask, but I'm sure that some of them are the same, yeah.
And then where did you get your training?
As a funeral director?
Yeah.
On the job.
Ah, right.
I'm a licensed funeral director with the state, but I don't have any formal training from mortuary college.
How old were you when you started working here?
Probably 18. I think I might have worked some summers during high school at the cemetery. And then after high school, I would have started working in the evening at visitations. So we have hours in the evening for viewing, and the day staff usually doesn't do that. Someone else comes in and sits here during that, and so that's what I was doing when I was 18, 19.
Well, what did you major in college?
I didn't finish school. Just went to Butte College and then Chico State and quit. Went to work in construction for a little while and then came to work for my dad.
And your sister Amy works for the business as well.
She does.
And so how does that work, working for your dad or working with your sister? What are the dynamics of a business family conglomeration?
Well, I would say that we're no different than any other family business. It can be difficult, and not so much between myself or my sister, between us and my dad. We always got along fine. You know, he was always the boss. We did what he said. But between the two of us, a little bit of a struggle. And,
Sibling
right?
rivalry,
Yeah. We wouldn't necessarily always agree on how to do things or the way to do things. And so fortunately we have several businesses, so we don't have to work in the same building together. So we can get a little bit of separation, each do our own thing and not be on each other's backs. So that's worked for us.
And what's your specialty and what's Amy's specialty?
I'm more funeral home, so meeting with families and working funerals. And she is a cemetery, so she knows all the laws and regulations and maps, and she knows all of the different sections and the unique difficulties that we might come across with old historic sections, and she knows all of that.
So you're like the people person and she's kind of like the engineering person in a way.
Kind of, yeah, yeah.
Is there only one cemetery in Chico, and is there any danger of running out of space?
There's two cemeteries in Chico. There's Chico Cemetery on Mangrove Avenue and Glen Oaks Memorial Park on Midway and Hagen Lane.
Hmm.
And there is not a danger of running out of room, even in Chico Cemetery. If you drive by on Mangrove Avenue and look in, it looks like it's full.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
But it's not. There's almost 5 acres of undeveloped ground inside Chico Cemetery, so we're filling in the developed areas, most of the developed areas. We're developing a new section right by the front gate that's being mapped and put together to start selling graves right there. And then there are areas in the back, all along behind by the junior high school, where the Shapiro Pool used to be. All of that back there was, when we took it over, was an olive orchard. And then by the back gate, the Washington Gate, is some area also. Plus, it mixed in, all of the developed areas still have graves in, not all of them, most of them do, graves interspersed in each section.
What's the most unusual headstone carving you've ever seen, if you have?
Well, the angel at Chico Cemetery is pretty special. Yeah. It's not a headstone per se. There is a family name, the Simpson family name, and then they put this sculpture in their family plot. But that's probably the most prominent one that I've seen. In Chico, that is.
Right. I mean, if you go to the East Coast, it's wonderful to see
Yeah.
the so-and-so had 8 children that died in childbirth and died in 1720 or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you see any changes in terms of deciding whether to be cremated or buried or put under a tree or ashes scattered? Is there any change in how we honor the body?
Well, there's been a long progression towards cremation, away from burial, traditional burial, to cremation. People will still bury cremated remains, but not at the rate that they did 50 years ago. And our rate of cremation is higher in California than it would be, say, in the Midwest or in the South. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you hear, I'm reading about ecological burials where you're buried under a tree or something ecological. I'm not really clear on what that is.
Green burial.
Green burial, yeah.
Green
What is
burial.
that?
It's an idea that maybe you try to live your life to have a low impact on things, low carbon footprint, and so you would take that into consideration in your burial also. And so you can take it to the nth degree, whatever degree you want. And cremation is not necessarily a carbon-friendly final disposition. Burial would be, and if you were going to be buried in the most green way, which may or may not be available to you, the most green way would be to be buried without embalming, without a casket, just maybe in a shroud, non-synthetic fiber, right? So natural fiber cloth, in the ground, not too deep, because the roots of plants don't go down 6 feet. If you got buried 6 feet down, nothing's going to be able to use your stored energy. But if you're buried just under the surface, maybe a foot or 2 feet, the trees, the grasses, the plants and bushes there would be able to use your remains to grow. So that would be the most green. That's not very available though.
You have 2 children. How old are they, and are they in line to be in the business?
They're not in line to be in the business. They're 23 and 25. And we have, to tell you the truth, never really encouraged them to be in the business. We've found it to be difficult. And our business is big enough that we wouldn't want to put it on them. It's too much.
Difficult in terms of the financial structure or in dealing with grieving people, or both?
I wouldn't say grieving people is a problem. That's just part of the business. But complying with state regulation, employees. We have almost 30 employees, and so it's a big thing to manage. There's 3 of us doing it: myself, my wife, and my sister, and it's all we can do. The idea of retiring and saying, "Here you go, good luck," just was never part of the plan. We wouldn't do that to our kids.
And Amy has a child too, so she feels
She's
the same.
young. She's 14, I think, and I don't know exactly the conversations that they've had, but I think she feels the same that we do. Yeah, my wife and I. Yeah.
So that's why you sold it to a corporation.
We did, yeah. So for years, it's been part of our plan to eventually partner with a large company to take over, relieve us of some worries and liabilities. And so we did that in November last year. So we're still here managing for them, and I think they want us to continue that. So we're still pretty young. One thing that we thought about in selling was that it was better to do it before we needed to, before one of us got sick, or something happened, and so we didn't have to sell. We're still, in our 50s, early 50s. My sister's 51, I think. I'm 53, and so it was a good time. Good time to do it, and a good company to partner with. We've found. We worked with them for a year, putting it together, and now it's been about 7 months, so 8 months, I guess.
Hi, you've lived in Chico all your life.
Yeah.
So how have you seen the business scene and the Chico scene change, evolve?
The funeral business
No,
scene,
no,
or
just Chico.
business scene? I don't know. I'm not
Or the
sure.
just
Maybe
the
I'm really
Chico.
in tune with the business scene.
What people usually talk about is it's gotten bigger, more traffic, don't have Pioneer Parade anymore, the malls, I don't know, anything like that that strikes you that, or is the Chico scene pretty much the same?
It seems the same. I think it's grown slow enough for me that I don't have any complaints. The idea of living in a smaller town is appealing, but my family's all here. A lot of people want to move out of state, but I don't know where I would go, and everybody's here, so we're Chico people, so we're gonna stick it out here. And I don't feel like Chico's a different place now than it was 30 years ago.
Last question is, if you were giving advice to a young person who wanted to start a business, any business, what would you say to them based on your business background?
I would say the key is employees, keeping happy employees. I think a lot of people just want to hire someone and bark orders at them and expect them to pull their weight. And maybe that might have been the case, that you could treat people that way 30 years ago and keep them. But today you really have to stay on top of being in touch with employees and making sure that everything is going well for them. There's a lot of jobs out there. They can do anything. They can move easily from one career to another. And so if you're not keeping employees, you're making life difficult on yourself.
Because then you have to retrain, and that's a lot
Yeah.
of time and money. Yeah. Are you and your wife able to, at home, say, whoop, okay, no more talking about work, business?
No, probably that way in any business, but in the funeral business, our business is 24 hours a day. So even if we tried to not do that, there are people, we have employees working or on call every day of the year, 24 hours a day. And so it does not end. It keeps going.
Oh,
The phone
so
will always ring in the middle of the night.
someone dies, and then immediately they call you and say, help me deal with this body and set up this and that.
Well, it's not always me. We have people on an on-call schedule, but, you know, if they need help, eventually it does come to me, so, yeah. And the other night, someone called in the middle of the night. They lost a family member out of town and needed some help, so talked them through that.
So it's really a good service.
I think so. They told me that they, even though they weren't using us directly, that they had a real connection here over a long period of time. And so they felt comfortable calling me and asking the answering service in the middle of the night to put them through to Marc, and they did, and it's not a big deal. I get calls like that. So yeah, no, it's satisfying being able to help people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Perfect.